imagine, one fine day, you're in the ocean with your friends in a yacht, and you're enjoying the sea and the beautiful landscape, when suddenly you hear a voice. Suddenly you feel that your boat's sinking. Suddenly you see tentacles wrapping your boat around. And suddenly you see it. You see the kraken. What's going on, guys? Today marks the beginning of a new series called Mythbusters, where I talk about myths and creatures and beasts and folklore, and we discuss it. And in the end, comes to a certain conclusion whether it was true or false. So today's video is, you guessed it right, the kraken. So let's get into it. So the word kraken is derived from the word kraken, which means an unusual thing or an unusual animal. So which means kraken perfectly, because kraken is an unusual animal. It's a gigantic squid that lurked underwater, and the legend was. So let's get back to the etymology of the kraken, the history of kraken. So kraken has been in the history books since the early 1100s, but it came into prominence during the late 1800s and also beginning 1800s, mostly in the late 1800s, when in the Icelandic, Greenlandic, Norway, Scandinavian Ocean areas, when sailors, shipmen, boats and battleships. So you gotta understand in that time, the world was still relatively new to each other, and people would try to move around from one continent to another continent in search of, different prospects and business and a bunch of things, moving around from one place to another. So the fleets of ships used to move around in those oceans, in these European oceans, in these Scandinavian oceans. So the legend was that many times sailors spotted a huge, gigantic squid and lurked underwater, and when they felt that there was something underwater and the boats and ships used to hit it, and instantly huge, gigantic tentacles used to come out of the ocean and coil themselves around the boat and ship and start crushing them until they were barely sawdust and causing the ship to sink, the fleet to sink, obviously. Kraken was around 40 to 50 feet. That's the estimate was. It was around 30, 40, 50 feet at that point in time. And think about it, squids aren't that big. Squids and octopuses, whatever you might call them, they grow to a certain extent of size, but they're not that big that they can kill human beings or cause ships to sink. That's not really possible, right? But the kraken was, and the legend was that kraken. I mean, people saw the kraken and say that they saw that it had these suckers, the thing that the squids and octopuses use, like vacuums, that had spikes and fangs and other kind of weaponry associated with, that had, was used as defense mechanism to hunt down the people, hunt down the boats and cause them to sink. That's kind of dangerous. Think about a gigantic squid, 30, 40, 50 feet squid underwater, and your ship, and it comes out, its tentacles, it has fangs and suckers and a bunch of different dangerous tools. And then basically you have no solution, no help but to die. So the Norway Scandinavian area was full of these Norse mythology at that point of time. Also, Greece was kind of in that particular region, the European region. So the Greek mythology and Nordic mythology have something in common, which is the kraken. And kraken in both of them is something that's of huge importance. And so kraken also can be you can say the kraken was derived from there. And further research has been done on what the kraken was. And kraken basically was, if it was a real thing, it might have been just a gigantic squid of some sort. And you think about it. Animals throughout the history in the past, like millions of years ago, used to be huge in size. The largest snake was 40 feet tall. The largest recorded snake, at least, the Danaboa, was 40 feet long, which is the huge. Just think about it. That's extremely dangerous. And different animals, the alligators, the turtles, and a bunch of animals, they all used to be massive compared to what they are today. That's because the climate changed. That's because the tropical climate changed and everything throughout the history, how the course of time changed in the world, causing them to reduce in size. So the squid, the kraken might have been a squid that was once gigantic in size, and it might have been one of those species, extinct species. It might have crossed across the ships, and people have seen it, and they were amazed to see a gigantic squid at that point in time. And do I think it had suckers and fangs and a bunch of things? I think it has suckers, because squids inherently have suckers, and octopuses have them too. That's how they move around, that's how they use to hunt down the prey. But the fangs and a bunch of things, I think that's embellished. Think about it, every urban legend has some truth in it, whether it be vampires and werewolves and bunch of things, the harpies, everything has a little bit of truth in it from where the legend derives itself from. That's what I believe so. And that's what I want to talk about in this series going forward is even if we know that the legend is a myth, we're still going to believe in it a little bit because we know there's always a little truth in these things. So the kraken was a dangerous thing, like I told you. It's been popularized today in almost every kind of film and media. Think about it. Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow kills the kraken. Percy Jackson has Sea of Monsters. The Sea of Monsters is said to have a kraken in the ocean apparently. And the kraken in God of War. Kratos basically fills the God. We got a fight God, the kraken kill him. Also Scylla, but we talk about the Scylla in the new second video coming. Interesting creature too. Similar to the kraken, that is underwater beast, but completely different as well. So the kraken has been popularized today, and there's a kind of cryptocurrency as well. It's called kraken. So you think kraken has seeped his way into pop culture as well because of its infamous nature. And think about it. In today's time, if the kraken existed, there are a ton of ways to subdue it, sustain it, obviously not killing it. But let's think about it. If in today's world where ships and shipping is of most importance and causes in our whole supply chain and import and export is dependent on ships, and if a huge squid comes and tries to sink it, come on, that's not going to work, is it? So the kraken, and obviously the size of the ships today are huge and full of metal and different kinds of parts which are difficult for a squid that is 30 to 40 feet long to put it down. So sink it. So that's about it with the kraken. Also, if you want to know more about the kraken, you should know and read Norse mythology, because also Greek mythology, because they have a bunch of things about the kraken that are really interesting. And going further in the series, like different videos, I will talk much more in detail about the topics that I really can discuss. So this is much as I can discuss the kraken, because the kraken is a pretty basic topic. And this is the first video in my series. I hope you guys liked it. And please comment whatever you guys want to watch, any experiences, any stories that you guys would like me to talk about, any paranormal stories, because that's what I'm going to talk about in this series, and we're going to come to a certain conclusion. So thank you for watching the video. Hope you guys liked it.